Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a totally mind-bending astronomical mystery. Every single time the James Webb Space Telescope points its massive mirror toward the deepest, oldest corners of the universe, it just keeps finding stuff that is quite literally breaking our understanding of the cosmos. It's essentially a massive cosmic whodunit, and today, we're going to examine the evidence together.
So let's get right into this. For the past 4 years, astronomers have practically been losing sleep over hundreds of these tiny, deep red dots scattered across the early universe. We're talking about objects crammed into the very first billion years after the Big Bang, which is a super crucial era when the first stars and galaxies were just getting their start. But here's the impossible part. These dots completely defy all known scientific categories. They just don't behave like anything we have ever seen before.
Let's start with the discovery of these mysterious red dots.
Now, James Webb's giant golden mirror was built for one highly specific job, right? Catching ancient light. Because as light travels for billions of years from the early universe, space itself is physically expanding. And that expansion actually stretches the light. Think of an ambulance speeding past you on the street. You know how the siren's pitch drops and stretches out as it drives away? Well, the exact same thing happens to ancient light. That high-energy blue light stretches out over billions of years, shifting into red and eventually turning into invisible infrared light. We call this cosmological redshift, and honestly, James Webb is the ultimate infrared detective.
But there's a huge contrast here between expectation and reality. Astronomers totally expected the early universe to look like a messy field of sparks. Sprawling, scattered young galaxies just bursting with hot, newly formed blue stars. And to be fair, they did find those. But hiding right there in the deep images were these extremely sharp, incredibly dense, needle prick anomalies. They were intensely red, not blue, and they looked absolutely nothing like sprawling spiral galaxies.
Which brings us to 3 baffling clues from the crime scene.
Why exactly did these tiny anomalies make astronomers realize our standard theories were falling apart? Well, it boils down to these 3 measurements. First up, their light spectrum forms this ridiculously sharp V-shape. It's a sudden, aggressive jump from blue right into a flood of bright red light. And almost nothing in the universe does that. Normal galaxies give you a nice, smooth curve. Second, they're impossibly tiny. We're talking maybe 100 light-years across. And third, the hydrogen gas swirling around them is roaring at thousands of kilometers per second. Gas simply doesn't move that fast on its own, unless something with immense, overwhelming gravity is whipping it around. To really wrap our heads around that second clue, just how incredibly small they are, think about it like this. If you shrank our entire Milky Way galaxy down to the size of a massive cricket stadium, one of these little red dots would be smaller than a single chair sitting in the stands. Yet somehow, this one tiny chair is pumping out as much light as the entire stadium combined. I mean, that is a mind-bending level of density.
And the plot thickens even more, because astronomers didn't just find 1 or 2 of these. They found them in massive numbers, about 10 times more of these dots than our current cosmological physics models even allow for. When your measurements are off by a full order of magnitude, it doesn't just mean someone miscounted. It means a massive fundamental chunk of our physics is just outright missing.
So what happened when the old theories failed?
Like any good detectives, the scientists obviously interrogated the usual suspects first. In space, if you see something red, the oldest rule of thumb is that it's just an old galaxy full of dying, cool red stars. Let's track how this panic actually unfolded. The CERS survey first spotted these weird dots back in late 2022. By early 2023, IVA Labs team published a paper suggesting these were just incredibly heavy, ancient galaxies. Headlines were literally screaming that cosmology was broken. But as more data rolled in from surveys like Ruby's and Cosmos Web, scientists realized those old theories just were not holding up. It took until March 2025 for a real breakthrough to finally arrive.
And here is exactly why that first suspect, the old galaxies theory, completely crumbled. These dots exist less than 1 billion years after the Big Bang. There literally wasn't enough time for a massive galaxy to form and age like that. Plus, if you somehow crammed a whole galaxy's worth of stars into a space the size of that single stadium chair we talked about, those stars would be smashing into each other constantly. And those collisions, they would emit massive amounts of X-rays. But when the telescopes looked for them, the X-ray signal was totally silent.
Okay, so they moved on to suspect number 2, a supermassive black hole hidden behind a really thick blanket of dust. Black holes get incredibly bright when they feed, so it kind of makes sense. But when they tested this theory, every single prediction completely flatlined. Still no X-rays piercing through. The telescope didn't find any warm glowing dust, 0 radio waves. And honestly, the most damning evidence of all? They didn't flicker. Normal feeding black holes flicker as gas falls into them, but these dots were just perfectly, eerily still.
This totally cleared the board, leading to the birth of the black hole star.
The scientific community desperately needed something brand new. In March 2025, 3 separate teams from the Max Planck Institute, MIT, and Swinburne University published papers literally within hours of each other. They hadn't coordinated at all, yet they all pointed at the exact same shocking new suspect, the black hole star. To get how this works, you have to understand photon trapping. When a ton of gas falls into a black hole, it creates intense radiation. But if the surrounding hydrogen gas is incredibly thick, the light particles, the photons, actually get stuck. They just bounce around, getting absorbed and re-emitted on a loop. It's exactly like how photons inside our own sun take 100,000 years just to escape to the surface.
So picture this. Imagine a searing hot, glowing coal that is completely wrapped in a super thick, dense fog. You don't actually see the violent fire of the coal inside, right? All you see is this steady, eerie, glowing fog on the outside. In this new model, the supermassive black hole is that coal, and it's hiding inside a giant envelope of gas larger than our entire solar system. The extreme X-rays lose all their energy bouncing around inside that fog, and eventually they just leak out as a smooth, cool red glow.
But we need evidence, which brings us to the cliff, the ultimate proof.
Because a beautiful theory means absolutely nothing without the data to back it up. The ultimate proof for this black hole star model came down to one single extraordinary dot discovered in the RUB survey. Astronomers nicknamed it the Cliff, sitting a staggering 12 billion light-years away. This was the absolute most extreme example of the mystery we've ever seen. Its gas was whipping around at 1,500 kilometers per second, and its light spectrum had the sharpest, most perfect V-shape of any dot found so far. It became the ultimate test case to see if this wild new theory could actually hold water.
And look at how beautifully the black hole star model solves every single missing signature. Why are there no X-rays? Well, because the impossibly dense gas absorbs them before they can ever escape. Why the deep red color if there's no dust? Because that redness is coming directly from the glowing gas envelope itself. And why no flickering? Because that super thick fog perfectly smooths out all the chaotic flickering of the black hole inside, turning it into one steady, continuous glow. It literally ties every single loose thread together.
Opening up the universe's unsolved new chapter.
If this model really proves to be correct, it means we aren't just looking at some weird new type of galaxy. We are looking at a brand new, previously unrecorded stage of cosmic evolution. Think of a caterpillar hiding inside a chrysalis. From the outside, you just see this quiet, hanging shell. But inside, this massive, violent transformation is happening. The black hole star model suggests we are literally witnessing the hidden, closed-shell infancy of supermassive black holes, seeing them right before they burst out of their gas envelopes to become those blazing, galaxy-powering quasars we see later on in the universe.
Now, I do want to emphasize that science is a living, breathing process. While the black hole star is absolutely the leading, most robust model right now, the debate is fiercely alive. Other teams are out there arguing for some deeply fascinating alternatives. Things like the very first monster stars made purely of hydrogen and helium, or gas clouds that directly collapse into black holes without ever even becoming stars, or even entire galaxies trapped in rare, non-spinning dark matter halos.
But honestly, whatever the final answer turns out to be, this whole saga is just a massive triumph of human curiosity. We launched a giant golden mirror 1,000,000 miles into space, peered into the darkest parts of the universe's very first chapter, and we found something that completely shattered our expectations. It really forces us to ask, if our old physics broke on the very first page of this newly discovered chapter, what other unbelievable secrets are still waiting for us out there in the ancient dark? Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. Keep looking up.